Hello, listeners. Welcome to yet another episode of Courage Talks. Special guest today is Adil. Adil is a corporate honcho as well as an endurance athlete. The amazing part about Adil is he's got a mind-boggling 350 races in his career across half marathon, full marathon, Ironman and Ultraman. At some point of time, I think he lost count and he had to ask other people, "Ke main kya kar raha hu?" Well, apart from being a fantastic athlete and having an established career in great companies like WNS, he has made a tremendous contribution to the society as well. And as a jolly good Parsi, you know how good Parsi people are. So here's welcoming Adil to Courage Talks.
Hi everyone. Hi Ethel. Thank you for having me here on Courage Talks. So just one correction. I'm also a Virgo. So I don't have to ask anybody how many events I've done. I maintain an Excel sheet. Plus I have 3 or 4 now thick files. Every run, every bib, every finisher certificate, any other paper that I feel is associated with the event, I file in that file. So I have about now this big, about 3 or 4 folders which are more than a foot thick with every bib, every certificate, everything there, and an Excel sheet which I update. Every event I do, I write the sheet, the bib number, the event, the date, what was the distance, what time I took. It's a full sheet there.
Wow. So I know WNS does outsourcing. Do you also do outsourcing of these services?
No, I do this. I do it myself. I do it myself. I take printouts, I put everything there. And nowadays it's become easier. In the olden days, there were all these written certificates with handwritten certificates you used to get.
Wow.
And sometimes some organizer would miss.
I didn't know that was a phase like that as well.
Yeah. So I have an old standard chartered. My first run which I did was the standard chartered half marathon in Bombay.
Right.
Okay, and that's a handwritten certificate,
Wow.
So in those days, handwritten certificates were normally given to you on the spot when you finish, like how you get a medal and you walk away.
Yeah.
Or maximum they would send it to you in a day or two, or they would give you some location where you would go and collect it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you would really follow up because some organizers after the event conveniently would take their own time to return the certificate to you, and you had to really follow up to get it. I still one certificate I have to take from one duathlon I did, and I have messages on my phone on Facebook Messenger which I messaged the fellow who organized it.
Yeah.
It's been now some 10 years. I've sent him a few reminders also. That's the only one I can remember which hasn't come. Otherwise I have all of them.
The poor guy forgot he organized an event. You're not forgotten that he didn't get the certificate.
I don't think he organized an event after that. That was the only one, I guess.
ऐसी गलती वो फिर से नहीं करेगा अभी.
हो सकता है. हाँ.
Great. I was just joking that your profile is 4 pages long. It's actually 4 pages long. But if you had like 60 seconds to narrate all your running accomplishment or your endurance accomplishment, what do you try to comprise and say in those 60 seconds? Let's hear that.
So I'm a recreational amateur athlete.
Okay. Start with modesty.
I do it for the fun of it. I do it to enjoy. It's my me time. And it's taken me and made me see places in the world where normally I may not have gone. So both me and my wife, we love to travel. So we call them run occasions, runs and vacations. We combine the word and we call it run occasions. So we've seen a lot across the globe doing these events and seeing that. I think it's a great way to stay alert, healthy, fit. So if you ask me, these are the main reasons why I am doing what I'm doing.
Wonderful. But if you had to summarize all your running accomplishments, how many was the last half marathon? I somewhere saw you got into Limca Book of Records.
Yeah, so I have done over 400 events now. Some 10Ks, half marathons, full marathons, triathlons, etc. Some ultra events also.
Right.
Okay, I started roughly around the year 2010. So it's been 14 years since I've been doing this. And like I told you earlier, I have a full sheet which maintains all the records.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the whole thing is that I started my first event in Bombay. I happened to be in Pune in our office there. And I read the newspaper and it said that there is an event happening on Sunday. And those days it was a standard chartered Mumbai marathon. Okay, and I said, okay, let me go run it. So I asked for the entry and I was told, sorry, you can't get an entry because the entry closed. And some 3 days before the run, you can't just ask for an entry, So I didn't get it. And then I realized what to do. Then they said, you can come and run there's something called the 6K, 7K, there was 3K or a 6K Maja run. Okay, you can run that. I said, no, I'm not going all the way to run some 3K and 6K. I want to run the marathon. Then I found out that the medical director happened to be a friend of mine.
Okay.
Also a very good runner himself, Dr. Ashish Contractor. I contacted him. He offered to give me a bib for the full marathon.
Was the Parsi bhai connection?
Yeah. So it was agreed upon. And then when he realized I'd never run at all. I've never done any event. He also said, boss, I can't give you a full marathon bib. After all, you have to have some training, something, etc. So we came to a compromise and I ran the half marathon. He gave me a bib. He gave my brother a bib also. Both of us ran together.
Okay.
And we finished differently, obviously, but we ran together. And that's how we both did our half marathon. And before us, my wife already had done one half marathon. So she was actually the first person in our family to have gone and registered an event and run it.
Wow. That's very interesting. So this podcast is Courage Talks. It's all about courage. Story is my book, which I wrote on my father, his biography, Against All Odds. So it's all about courage, right? So what does courage mean to you, Adil, both in sports and in life, right? What strikes you when you hear about the word courage?
I think a couple of things. One, to do the right thing. Okay, it may not be the popular thing, but the right thing. The second thing is to reach the start line. So when it comes to running, I've always believed if you reach the start line, you'll reach the finish line. The main thing is to train and be disciplined enough to reach the start line. Like I said earlier, I did my first run with no training, but after that I've been running, and it's automatic training as you run through different events, and you train particularly for events, etc. But I think that summarizes it, to do the thing which is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And then there's that famous line, no, of some movie, I forget, I think it was Amitabh's movie, कि line वहीं से शुरू होती है जहाँ हम खड़े होते हैं. Okay. So,
Yeah.
in a way, that also sums up me in a way. I've always tried to, be there, and have people lead from the front kind of thing. So that's also courage, okay, to me.
Yeah.
To be in the driver's seat, okay, to drive what has to be done,
Right.
and to partner equally with everybody to make it happen. I think that's, in a way, if you ask me, help the underdog, side with that, unless the underdog is wrong, okay, because you must side with the right, not the wrong. And also courage means to walk away from a fight which doesn't need to be fought. You have to pick and choose your battles. There is no use. There's another saying that you get into a fight with a pig, both of you are getting dirty, but he's enjoying it. Okay. So you have to understand where you have to fight and what you have to fight.
Yeah.
So courage does not always mean, and you must have, I don't know if you've heard that famous Kenny Rogers song, walk away from trouble when you can. So that's also courage, to choose your battles.
Correct.
And stand with your friends and your family. That's another thing about courage.
Yeah.
In your team or in your group, if somebody has done wrong, stand up for him. At the end of the day, if he has done it, he has done it maybe unintentionally, maybe, circumstances made him do it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Give him support at that time. Lift a man when he's down rather than kick him further down.
Of course. Very.
That's another point, if you ask me. It is something to do with courage.
Got it.
So I think summarily, if you ask me all of these points and wisely do what you have to,
Right.
A lot of times there's another saying, fools rush in where wise men,
Stay back.
no, there's a word for it. The wise men dare to go, something like that, So that doesn't mean that you are scared or you are afraid of doing it. You're not doing it because doing it is going to harm you. You're going to get killed for doing it.
Yeah.
So things like that.
Got it. Who's your role model for courage, if you had to name one?
I don't actually have anybody I can think of straight off the cuff like this for courage. But I would say any individual which has the qualities I just described. Okay. And I'm sure there are lots and lots of people in the world who are doing this. You can say who can be role models, and role models are different for different people. I mean, you can have role models at home, in family, like you said, your father, you wrote a book. Similarly, I lost my dad when I was 16.
Sorry about that.
Road accident. It was a tragic thing for us in the family. He was one of my role models. There are some other senior people who helped me initially in life. When I started off, they were very grateful for the assistance and help I got from them to get me going. My wife is a role model. She's very supportive in every sense of the word. She may not be the absolute perfect role model. I don't think any husband thinks his wife is a perfect role model, but she's pretty much there. Let's put it that way. Okay.
Wonderful.
My brother's done well for himself. He's also a nice guy. I can consider him also as a good role model. And overall in the Parsi community, there are many people who have done good in the community, not just for the community, but overall for human beings, for the nation. Okay, there are many role models to choose from within the community too.
Yep.
So there are lots of role models, you can put it that way. But I cannot tell you any specific one as such. In my office also, there are some very good people who I've been working with for many years. People who are senior than me, people who are with me, people who are below me. I mean, below me means junior than me.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody concerned. I mean, there are a lot of people in the company who also I can say are role models. I have seen them in adverse situations. I've seen them how they react, what is the line they have taken to find solutions. So for me, they're also role models. That's what I meant.
So we know you as you are today, but why don't you take us down memory lane? What was growing up like? What was childhood like? Were you as naughty in childhood as you are now, or even worse?
So if you ask me I'll tell you a thing that happened when I was in class KG, kindergarten.
Yeah.
So we used to stay in Delhi and we used to go home by school bus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember in the olden days, the school buses had one emergency door at the back.
Yes. Yeah.
In case of any emergency. And that door actually never opened.
Yeah.
It was more to show that there's an emergency. Yeah, it was more like just for show, there's an emergency door. I think it was a government regulation that you had to have an emergency door. So that door used to be there. And I, as a small kid, was very stubborn or something. The story goes like this, that I was told not to sit next to it by the teachers, etc. But, as a small kid, I must have been like very insistent, very stubborn and all. So I sat next to the door. And in those days, when we used to live in Delhi, our school was near Dhalakwan. The Dhalakwan was a circle. If you remember old Delhi, the Delhi of that time, not today's flyovers and all that. So on the circle, as I was sitting near the door, when the bus took a curve, on the turn, the door opened and I fell out from a moving bus. Imagine a 4-year-old kid, falling off a moving bus.
Yeah.
But in those days, there was hardly any traffic and all, so luckily nothing. I didn't get hit or anything. I just fell on this road.
Right.
And the bus kept going. Nobody realized I'd fallen.
I was about to ask that, right? Because all of the other kids were...
Because I was sitting at the back, by myself, and I fell off the bus and nobody realized I'd fallen. Luckily for me, there was a cyclist who pedaled hard and caught up with the bus at a bus stop where it was some kids had to get off. And that luckily that bus stop was just a few hundred meters. So the cycle fellow caught up with the bus and informed them that tumhara bachcha gir gaya hai piche,
Oh man.
And that's how, they came, and obviously I was sitting on the side of the road. I don't remember now, maybe crying or whatever.
Right.
And lifted me and they took me home. So, my mother used to recollect this incident a lot and tell me. Because whenever I would do something, she would say, tum bachpan se aise the, tum bus se bhi gir gaye the. That's how, it was. So if you ask my initial first memory, I think of that. I can think of that. And I can think of another one where I remember I went to the garden and a rose thorn, a small kid, I was trying to pick a rose or something and the thorn got into my finger. And I was running with pain, crying, and I slipped and I fell and I cracked my head, and they had to do stitches and all that. So these are the couple of, I guess my childhood was a bit naughty or whatever you want to call it. And I think when we grew up as kids, we weren't so mollycoddled the way today's children are.
Yeah.
With so much of, we never had air conditioning, for example.
Of course.
We used to go by bus to school, which was simple. And Delhi, even in those days, was 40 degrees in summer and very 4 degrees in winter. In the morning, I remember every time we used to get up in the morning, we used to have a little bonfire where the bus stop, so that till the bus comes, we are warming our hands and to get into the bus and all that. And we had a very simple life. Both my parents, middle class, my dad was a government servant, my mom was a homemaker. Okay, so there was, that way of life was very different today, than today's children, where everything is video game and iPad and laptop and computer and phone, and most of the items are happening inside the house. All our lives were spent outside the house. Though we only came inside the house to either eat or when we were forced to study or to sleep at home at night.
Yeah.
Otherwise, most of the time was spent outside only. You went cycling on the street. In those days, there was no worry कि कोई गाड़ी से ठोक देगा बच्चे को cycle पे.
That's true.
Now, where can you go cycling on the road? No kid you see cycling. In those days, all kids used to cycle outside.
Yeah.
In the evenings, they would come in the colony streets and everybody would be cycling and all that. You don't see that at all nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So I think it was a different childhood for that generation, for my generation, than what the current generation is at.
That's true. It's interesting you mentioned about the bonfire at the bus stop. We used to do that in Bhopal.
Yeah.
I was in boys' school and we used to all gather together, and there was a girls' school and they would gather and, stand in their group, right? And obviously, the guys were the ones who would do the bonfire.
Yeah, so we had a co-ed school also, but we had a bus. We had an Air Force. Actually, we used to go in, and later on it became an Air Force truck. Okay. My school was an Air Force school. So it was a 3-tonner truck. And the reason that bonfire was so important, because when you got in the truck, the truck had a canvas top. This is open from the front. So you would get all the cold wind inside the truck as you're sitting on the benches. It was basically a truck meant for soldiers. It was a defense truck.
Got it.
We used to sit in that bus at the back. It was not a bus, it was a truck. It was a bench seats. And you would sit at the back and you would get buffeted by the wind and you would bounce there, and no suspension. Every gadda, every, bump on the road you felt in your butt, it would bounce all the way to school. And that truck was for 3-4 schools. So ours was a co-ed school. But then we went to Loreto, which was a girls' school. Then we went to Mount St. Mary's, which was a boys' school. We used to pick up kids, and then Kendra Vidyalaya. So 4 schools, kids would go in that truck every day in the morning and come back in the afternoon.
Wow.
So the afternoon trip, sometimes to avoid this, because it would take over an hour for the kids to be collected from all schools and come home. We used to sometimes take the DTC bus and go home. As we got older, we used to. And if you remember, I don't know if you know, but in the olden days, for 12.5 rupees at Sindhya House, you went and got a student's bus pass for DTC. For 12 rupees 50 paisa, you could take a student's pass, and you could, for the whole month, you could travel all over Delhi with that pass.
Very interesting. You mentioned you lost your dad early. Any memories which stays with you about your dad? Anything which...
My dad was a very strict guy, a disciplinarian. Everything in our house used to run like clockwork. Getting up, going to sleep, having your meals. Quite a lot of things were timetable kind of a thing. And my dad was very good at what he did. He was a very senior government officer, retired as Secretary of Finance, which is a very senior person in the central government. In those days, like you have the IAS now, the earlier officers were the ICS officers. He was an ICS officer. So huge amount of respect. A lot of people used to come to meet him at home also. And in those days, even today, senior bureaucrats are very powerful people. They're the ones who are running the country in a way. So my dad was a part of that group at that time. But like in the olden days, each and every all these officers us were schooled in the very clear-cut manner, absolutely non-corrupt, clean. When my dad retired, his salary was $3,500 a month, and he had an honest life, an honest career throughout his life. I remember all these points about him, that, he was a very straightforward, upright government officer.
Very interesting. While you mentioned about half marathon and full marathon, you have done multiple Ironmans and Ultraman as well, which is like the BAP of all Iron. And when you talk about courage, endurance sports really brings out the best from a courage perspective, right? Anytime you felt you kind of touched the limit, you felt that this is being too much, any interesting episode or any accident or any injury that stays with you as something?
Because when you have a 14-year span of taking part in running activities and sports and all that, there are all days can't be Sundays and good days. Some of them are also tough days. So let me first say that even if you have to run a 10K or race 10K, run full hard, where your heart rate all the time is above 170 beats a minute or 180 beats a minute, can be very tough. So anybody who has run a 10K in less than 45 minutes or 40 minutes will understand what I'm saying. When you're running at a pace of 4.5 minutes to a kilometer, 4 to 4.5 minutes to a kilometer, that's a tough run. So that can be tough. When it comes to long distance, I think it's all in the training. On the day of the event, you just go there to celebrate and to enjoy the race and, finish it and get your medal, be happy about, because these are titles that are earned. You cannot buy them. You can't say I went and bought an Ironman. You have to become an Ironman. The only way you can become an Ironman is when you finish the race. And when you are classified as a finisher and, the guy announces Ironman, you've done. You understand what I'm saying? When you run down that red carpet at the end, under the arch, and when he shouts, Adil, you are now an Ironman, that voice will remain with you for the rest of your life. But that can only happen. Now, an Ironman is a 3.8 kilometer swim, actually 4, because you end up doing extra 200-300 meters very easily in the ocean. Okay, so you're doing a 4K swim, you're cycling for 180 kilometers, and then you're running a full marathon, which is 42 kilometers. And you get some 16 hours, 17 hours, depending on some courses are 16, some courses are 17. And typically people from in my circle of friends who've done it, all have done it around 13, 14 hours. And now you're on your feet for 14 hours. You have not had any chance to take a break at all. You are fueling yourself as you are taking part in the event. So if you're on the bike, you're drinking and eating and drinking and eating through gels and, your nutrients and all that. Now, all that can only happen if you have trained. And somebody can get up and run a 10K. Somebody can even get up and run a half marathon. But I don't think anybody can just get up one day and say, man, next day I will Ironman cut. There could be some supermen in the world, but that brings me to one story. I have a friend in Gurgaon called Abhishek Mishra, who's also done an Ultraman, who's also done an Ironman. And he came to my house for lunch. It was a Wednesday or a Thursday afternoon, and we were just generally chatting. And he told me that he's going on Sunday to do a triathlon. I knew what a triathlon was. I understood the 3 disciplines, but I'd never done one. So I told him, I want to do. So he said, boss, you haven't trained. It's a half iron distance. You'll have to swim for 2 kilometers, cycle 90 kilometers, run a half marathon. So I'd done some full marathons by then. So I said, okay, let's try what is there. So then through another friend, another Parsi guy in Madras, a guy called Neville Bilimoria, who's also a very good runner and a cyclist and all that. Through him, I got the entry. And it was run by this Chennai Trekkers Club. And you'll be surprised, the entry fee was just 250 rupees.
Which year?
2015-16, around that time. So I said, for $250, what will this guy provide? This event is going to last for some 8-9 hours. What's he going to provide? But that guy had done everything well. There was nothing wrong with the organization. It was just that he was charging that less of money. Maybe it got sponsors or whatever. So 4 of us went from here. Me, Abhishek, Gaurav Makkar, and a friend of ours called Negi. I don't know if you know Gaurav, Negi. They're all good guys, good friends. So all 4 of us went and we took a hotel room, shared, like 2 of us in a room each. And all 4 of us went and did the event. Okay, so we're all very happy. Gaurav was the fastest amongst us. He did, I think, a 7.5, 8 hour kind of thing. Now, though the cutoff nowadays is 8.5 hours for this, but he had kept a cutoff of some 9 hours or 10 hours or something. I remember I did it around 9 hours, little less than 9, maybe around 9 hours. Makkar did it 7.5 hours. And between me and Makkar, Abhishek finished somewhere 8 hours or something. Negi also finished around my time only. So, so we were all very happy we finished and we came back, So that was our initiation, I think, into the triathlon. And then after that, for I think a year or two, I didn't do anything as such. And then I wanted to do a full Ironman. And before that, I went and did my first official Ironman 70.3 event in Turkey. We went. That's where I did my first one. And I remember when I reached there, in the evening, we went to the ocean and the waves were like 3 feet, 4 feet, kind of waves. And I was wondering, shit, man, I'm going to now. And I saw there was this bunch of either Japs or Chinese who were also taken part. And they were practicing in the evening. And I was seeing this one guy, he was moving backwards, though he was swimming forwards, but actually the waves were pushing him back to the shore. I was telling him, this guy looks stronger and fitter than me and he's finding it difficult to move ahead. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Okay, and I called up this friend of mine who's a good swimmer, climber. He also done Ironman. I called him, and from there I remember from Turkey, I called him and said, "Yeah, He said, "Don't worry, just relax." I remember his words. He said, "Don't worry, the ocean will be calm in the morning. Oceans are normally calm in the morning as the day progresses because of." The change in pressure, the hot air, cold air, whatever, the waves happen. So you don't worry. And true to his words, in the morning, it was like a flat piece of water. Absolutely. Wow. You could have hardly seen a ripple in the ocean.
Right.
And brilliantly, it was, but just by seeing that water, it just gave me so much energy, and I went and finished my first official race there from Ironman. And then from there, I've done about 9-10 of them now in total. Some full, some half. And in fact, I'm wearing this t-shirt. I don't know if you guys can see. Okay, let me stand up a bit. It says Ironman VR. So when COVID happened, everything went under lockdown.
Yeah.
So Ironman started a virtual series where every week they would come up with a event. In the earlier days, they were duathlons. Right. Because swimming pools were not available. No, they were all shut. There was no swimming. And everybody doesn't have access to open water, like a river or a sea or something. So they started doing duathlons, and then they started doing triathlons also, including one full distance event they did. In virtual. I did that. So the beauty of, I missed the first one because that mail that came in the spam folder. Oh man. But I did all of them after that. And there are only 99 people in the world who had done all of them. I missed the first one, but I did all the rest. And I've got all the certificates. They sent also. Every time you would finish, they would send you. Virtually you could go on they had a very nice app. You could go there on the page and see your event, what you did. Everything came out very nicely. What I'm going to say here is that it's all about the discipline. It's all about the training. Even though there was lockdown, even though there was, COVID, people were not doing things, I continued to do. I continued to train. I continued to do these virtual events and make sure that I was active. And just outside my house was a little police picket. So I made friends with those cops, So they wouldn't stop me when I used to go out on the bike or I used to go out on the run. Okay. I used to give them some chai in the morning. It was, like I remember when COVID was there, early morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when I would get up, I would carry one thermos of tea with some disposable cups and all, and I would give it to them, and I would cycle for 2 hours and come back. And I didn't go very far near my house because it was locked down. Everything was shut. So there was no traffic. Okay. So outside my house on the highway, I used to go up towards the airport and come back. I wouldn't go towards into Gurgaon because at that time there was a barrier there. They were stopping people to go from one state to the other state. I had a stretch of about 7 kilometers. So one loop was about 14-15 kilometers. So if I had to cycle, say 50 kilometers, I would do 3 loops. Yeah. Okay. If I had to do 100 kilometers, I'd do maybe 5-6 loops, 7 loops. Whatever. So what I mean to say here is that, I continue to train and I continue to do these virtual events throughout, the whole thing.
I think while you mentioned about the fact that real effort is in the training, right? The event is just more of a celebration. And I can relate to the Ironman part because yes, I mean, when I tell people doing the Ironman was very easy, the training was hard, they really don't believe that. But when it comes to an Ultraman, it's obviously a different league as well, right?
I'll tell you what happened was I didn't know I'm going to do Ultraman. I was training that year. I also have a Limca record for doing all the triathlon the same year.
Interesting.
Okay, so in the year 2009, so there are different distances. It starts with sprint. Sprint is the shortest distance where you have to swim, I think, 750 meters, cycle maybe 20 kilometers and run 5 kilometers. I think that's sprint if I'm not wrong. Okay. Then there is Olympic distance where you have to swim 1.5 kilometers, cycle for 40 kilometers and run 10 kilometers. Then you have 70.3, which is, 1.9, 90 and for 21.1. Then you have full, which is 3.8 and 180 and 42.2 into is a marathon. Correct. Then you have Ultraman, which is a 10K swim, 424K cycle and a 84.4K run, which is a double marathon. I did all of them in the year 2019 and I didn't know I was going to do all of them. It all started. So I first registered for the full Ironman. Okay, and I started training for that. When I was training for that, Olympic sprint and half happened as training. I registered for events and did these 3. Got it. It was, I built them into my training plan. Got it. Then I went and did the full. Then I got to know 3 months down the line was the Ultraman. And I was in peak performance at that time. My fitness levels were at one of their highest they've ever been. Because of so many hours and hours. I mean, I used to do 15-20 hours a week. Long rides, 150 kilometer ride, 120 kilometer ride, 20-30 kilometer runs. Brick training where you went and rode 100K, immediately you got off the bike and you went and ran 15K, 20K, or you swam for 2K and then went and cycled 50, 60, 100K or whatever and came back. Okay, so what I mean to say is that with so much of training, when I got to know as an Ultraman, it's only 3 months away, I said, let me continue and let me just build on it and finish it off. Okay, because I don't know when again will I get a chance to put in so much of effort in training. One. Secondly, another thing that we have to be very careful about is injury. You never know when you'll get injured. With all the precaution that one takes,
Yeah.
one can still get injured.
Yeah.
What is injury? You're running on the road and suddenly you pull a muscle, you sprain something, or you
Yeah.
fall and you break something. That's it.
Yeah.
It just stops there.
Yeah.
Then whatever time it takes to recover, it can be a few weeks, it can be a few months, it can take over a year also. Like a
Right.
friend of mine, last year, he fell off the bike. He broke his hip.
Yeah.
He had to get hip operated. He was in hospital for a week. After which took him a few weeks before he could start walking properly.
Yeah.
And now finally he's got back on the bike, maybe after some 6-8 months. So what I mean to say here is that injury can set you back by an indefinite period of time. So you have to be very lucky that through the year, when you're training, and a good coach try to keep you away from injury. The training plan that you will build it's like a building. No, you first build the basement, then you build the ground floor, then you build the first floor, then you build don't straight away go and build a top floor. No, the whole thing will fall down. Okay, same thing with training also. You have to build it over time. You have to build it, build the base, and over base, you build your next level and then your next level, and finally you are ready, just at peak performance for your event.
Right.
So I was very lucky that year, Ethel, that I didn't have any injury. I was very lucky that I didn't have any issue. Because of my training and the effort I had put in, I could seriously go and do all the events.
Wow. Yeah.
Having said that, first day was 10K. So Ultraman is broken over 3 days.
Yeah.
Let me tell the viewers that you get 36 hours to do it, but it's a 12 hour, 3 windows. You get over 3 days. And it starts at 5 in the morning. It'll end at 5 in the evening. Then second day, 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening. Same with third day, 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening. First day in the morning, you go swim 10K. And then you have to go and bike 150K. Which was fine. First day, I was fresh, energy, everything. I did it with about an hour to spare and all. So I was very happy. Well done. Next day in the morning, I just couldn't get up. I was feeling like, ye kya ho gaya? There's no energy in my body.
Yeah.
There's absolutely zero. And this is after I've sat in the ice bath in the bloody bathroom. We fill it up with ice cubes, chilled water, and sitting inside it. And I got one guy to come and do malish also. Everything.
Australia or Florida?
No, I did it here only. So I'll tell you. Yeah. So then after that, next day, you have to go and cycle 275K. This was on the KMP. Dozens and dozens and dozens of flyovers, hot sun, windy like anything. Now, when I got up in the morning, I told my wife, seems very difficult here. I'm finding it very difficult to even stand up. There's no energy in the body.
Yeah.
Somehow we convinced each other and we reached the start line. I remember I had a Red Bull at the start line. Yeah. First I had a Red Bull sitting in the car and I had another one at the start line. And I really suddenly the energy came. So when that slogan is, Red Bull gives you wings. For that day, it did give me wings. It really gave me wings. And I took off. And I took off to a level where I was literally leading the cycling pack. Okay, then I looked at my watch and I said, this is too fast. You have to cycle 275 kilometers. You just can't, at this pace, you'll burn out. So I slowed down. And my first 100 came in 4 hours. Because I had decided I will not average. No, it came faster than 4 hours. I wanted to average around 27, 28 kilometers an hour. I was averaging over 30 kilometers an hour. It came in about, 3 hours and some minutes.
Yeah.
And I said, this is too fast. I need to slow down. And on the return leg, on the way back, the headwind and the heat, that zapped me totally. But the reason I could finish it, my friend Gaurav had given me a nutrition plan. We had worked it out together. And my wife and son, who were my support.
Yeah.
And also, first day, Bipin also was there. Another friend of mine, Bipin. He also has done an Ironman, Ultraman. So we all had made this sheet, which every hour in detail mentioned the amount of carbs I need to load, the amount of gels I would have, the salts I would have, solid foods I would have, to ensure that I was totally fueled for the whole race. Mm-hmm. In endurance sport, if you feel hungry or thirsty, you've lost it. Because then your body will take that much more longer to regain.
They say
strength.
You should drink water when you're not thirsty because, by the time...
you should drink before thirst hits you. You should eat before hunger hits you. Okay, you have to constantly fueling yourself. So there's a formula for your body weight, etc., and for the effort you're putting. How many carbs per hour? How many grams of carbs per hour? How many grams of salt tablets? Whatever. When you're sweating, all your body salts are getting depleted, which need to be filled in. Otherwise, you start cramping. You won't be able to finish only. The thing is, the trick was all about the training through the year. Yeah. And on race day, the right nutrition. There's some also, like, for example, 2 Sundays ago, I did the Goa 70.3.
Right.
I ate 15 gels for that 7 hours or so that I was in the race. Yeah. I had 15 gels and I had 4 bottles of nutrition, in the form of electrolytes.
Right.
And each bottle had 3 scoops. So 4 into 3, 12 scoops of electrolytes, 15 gels, and each bottle had 3 salt pills. It was my own formula. I have now devised the formula over the years in training and running and cycling and all, that what my body needs, what my, individually what I need for my fueling. And it worked. I didn't get any cramp. I didn't get anything. I could do it. Though I had gone with very less training this year. This year has been very hectic for me work-wise. We moved house. My son went to Canada. We had a lot of change in our family also. So in that, it took time. I didn't get that much time as I had for training.
Right.
But what I mean to say here is that it was a very important thing to do is to ensure that you fuel yourself through the event in the right manner. Then came the third day, the run.
Yeah.
Now it's a double marathon.
Right.
And for many people who've never ever run, even a marathon is a very daunting task. On the third day, after having swum for 10 kilometers and biked for 424 kilometers, I had to go and run 84 kilometers. So I had made up my mind that I must run the first marathon in less than 5 hours. Now I will have 7 hours to run the second one in.
Yeah.
Which I planned. I broke it up and said that let me run the first one nicely without pushing myself. Pushing myself would have been around a 4.5 hour. 5 hours is decent pace for me. So I ran the first one in little less than 5. I remember some 4:45, 4:50 that I would have taken to run the first marathon.
Right.
Now I had little over 7 hours to run the second one, which was a walk run. I ran the first 10K, I remember running it. Then the beach ka 20K, I remember had become a walk run. The last 10K also, I suddenly ran very hard. Suddenly that adrenaline kicks in. Now you know the finish line is near.
You're getting there, then it's easier. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the home run now. You're on the way back to the finish and you say up. So you already start dreaming of being an Ultraman. You haven't reached it yet. Anything can happen. But in your mind somewhere you said, now it's like signed and sealed. All I have to go is just now reach it.
Yeah.
And I remember I finished in about 11 hours, both the marathons. So what I mean to say here is that training in that year helped me a lot.
Yeah, got it. And you mentioned about injury, and I heard that you did the Antarctica marathon, which is part of your running in every continent. You had an injury in your hand.
I had broken my arm, my wrist.
I resonate with that because I did the Ironman with a broken wrist. So how was it like carrying an injury to a marathon, and how did it all happen and what transpired?
So see, Antarctica is a different thing altogether because of the region, the desolate place. There is no, when you go to any other country, there's an airport, you land somewhere. There are facilities, there'll be a hotel, there'll be some hospital, there'll be a market, you can go visit something, it's nothing but barren land.
Yeah.
We went from Chile and landed in the Chilean airbase. Their airbase means it's just a strip of land where the plane lands. There's a runway. Runway made of stone and ice, and that kind of runway. It's not like an airport runway that we know as runway. Yeah. And there are some those like those army buildings, metal tin kind of buildings, like you can say army sheds or whatever. That's what there is. And the organizer had set up and pitched tents, and you had to go because the daylight there extends to 11 o'clock at night. We took off from Punta Arenas in the morning. We landed there in about 2 hours. The flight took some 2.5 hours or something. We landed. Then it took us some 1.5, 2 hours from the plane to walk to the Russian area because everybody wanted to go to the loo. It's cold, you feel like going to the loo. There's only 2 loos. Everybody's lined up. And because it's so cold, by the time you go once and you stand, by the time you're about to go second time, you feel like going again. And the rule was very clear. You cannot leave anything behind in Antarctica. It doesn't belong in Antarctica.
Okay.
So the organizer had to make sure that anything and everything had to be carried back because nothing belonged in Antarctica that we had. And when I say, we were even told you don't spit outside also. So whatever we peed, whatever we shat, whatever we ate, whatever rubbish we created, everything went back.
Wow.
You just can't leave anything behind. Their theory is that you'll contaminate the place.
Of course. True.
So we were very, and he told us very simply that you may make a mistake by doing it, but if they catch us, next year they won't give me the permission to hold the race here.
Got it.
So you please be careful, not just for yourself, but also for future runners. Yeah. Make sure that don't spoil the reputation or whatever, so that, I can come back and host this race year on year. Okay, so we all were very, very particular about, and he had a food tent. Everything was in that tent. You couldn't take anything out of the food tent, to eat. You ate there only. So in case you dropped anything or whatever, it was all in one place. They could lift everything and pack it up, to be flown back. And it was a charter flight. You charter flight in, charter flight out.
Wow.
Okay, there's no airline that goes there. You can't just go buy a ticket and say, "Main ja raha hu, Antarctica." There's no passport. There's no visa. You have a passport for South America, for Chile. You don't have a passport. But though I have a stamp on because when I went to the Russian base, I requested them and they stamped my passport. So I have an Antarctica stamp on my passport, which is a rare thing. I don't know anybody who has an Antarctica stamp on their passport. But what I mean to say is there's no immigration. There's no passport control because there's nothing. No, you're just landing in a barren piece of land. You're walking from your plane to one army camp where you go to the loo, then you walk to the start line, the run starts. The run was nothing but a 5-kilometer loop. Okay, you did it 8 times to do a full marathon distance. It was a little over 5 kilometers. It required, it involved a hill. So you climbed the hill, you came down, you climbed the hill, you came down for 8 times. And that's how you got your 42-kilometer distance.
Wow. And how many people were there? How many people were running
I
with
don't
you?
remember, but not too many, but 50, 60 people. Yeah, if I can remember right, not more than that. He had a limitation. He had a capacity limitation to carry that many people. I mean, maybe more, maybe about 70 people. I'm not sure now exactly. Can't
Got
remember.
it. Very interesting. And, while you were a familiar face in the running circuit in Gurgaon, not many people might know that your first love was motorsports. And while running for Yamaha, you actually had an injury as well. So why don't you just take the viewers back to that part
So
of your
that
life?
was when I was, I think, a teenager. And there was this rally which was called the Hot Weather Rally. I remember the word Hot Weather Rally. It was in the summers, and we were to motorcycle from here to Dehradun through off road and all. It was not like going on the highway or something, and come back from around Dehradun and come back. That was the race. So the next day, I had a fall in the forest area. That Cobbett Park, not Cobbett Park, the forest area below Dehradun, that lower Timli, Asha Rodi. I don't know if you remember these names, if you know these names.
Yeah.
I had a fall there in the forest and I broke my shoulder from here.
Uh-oh.
Luckily, it was the left side, not the right side, because the throttle on the bike is always on the right side and the clutch is on the left. Now I had no hand for the clutch. So I remember changing gears with my foot without using the clutch.
Yeah.
And I was leading the rally. I was coming first when this happened. But I still rode back to Delhi with a broken shoulder and I came third. Two people overtook me on the route and I still came third. So that was that rally. Yeah. That was very, I can't even remember the exact year. It must be 87, 88, 89, around that time. 1987, wow. 88, around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. The other aspect is obviously you're a mentor and you are inspiration for a lot of people, not just in the community, but in your company, WNS as well. The other day you mentioned that you ensure that everyone who signs up for races, their race registration money is reimbursed and all that. And when you talk about endurance, pushing ourselves is something we all are very good at, right? But how do you encourage other people to bring out the resilience and bring out the courage?
So this year, from what I know, 3 people from my company did the Goa Ironman 70.3. So I'm very kicked about it, because people have taken the leap into triathlon and endurance triathlon. But a lot of people are running 10Ks, half marathons, lots of them. Plus, we also encourage any sport. Like, for example, this Saturday is a badminton tournament in Bombay. We are booking a complex where we'll book the courts and everything. And from what I know, a couple of hundred people will go play and enjoy the weekend. Yeah. Similarly, for runs, what anybody can do is register for a run anywhere in India, go run it. And as long as you finish it, you have to provide us the receipt and the finisher certificate. We will reimburse the running fee only. So you can't say, I went to, say, Bombay to run, so now you please pay my airfare and hotel and all. That we will not reimburse, but we'll reimburse the fee. So a lot of people are taking care of, are running in local events. So Gurgaon, people who are working in WNS Gurgaon will take part in events in Delhi and Gurgaon. Similarly, people who work in Bombay, similarly work in Pune, Bangalore, Madras. We are all over the country. So wherever the local events are happening, people are going and running. The other day, I approved one full sports extravaganza in our office in Nasik, where every year for 2 days, one huge ground is booked. And if you remember your old school sports days, it's like that. The whole office will come down for those 2 days. Different activities will happen. Wow. Both men, women, everybody will take part. Cricket match happens. Everything happens, And I remember one year even did a family thing. Also. No, we don't have a march past. Okay. Just joking. We have a family day kind of thing where even you can bring your children from home, your wife, a spouse, and there are some food stalls and all that. So, people generally have a good time. So it's a good way to connect. Yeah. And a lot of people, though they know what their spouse is doing at work, also are happy to meet colleagues. A lot of times, for example, I might tell my wife, or today I had a conversation with so-and-so. So she hears of people's names, but she may not have met them unless socially we get to meet each other. That's another thing that we do all across WNS. And I'm happy to say that every year about 8,000-10,000 people in the organization take part in some activity or the other. Some of them could be repeats. So I might do 3 of them. So I'm counted as 3 yet. But if you say individuals, more than some 3,000-4,000 individuals take part in some event or the other.
I think that's very inspiring. And at one point of time, you did about 60 events in 52 weeks, right? And, people who work want to take a break from work. People who study, students who study want to take break from studies. You didn't take a break from running for those 52 weeks, right? What motivated you to go constantly on?
So I'll tell you, there is this, the first year I happened to do some 30 events in 1 year. Okay, so I was very happy. Yeah. So there's this friend of mine, Naveen Kundu. He told me he runs a company called Ebix. You may have heard of Ebix Cash and Ebix. So he just happened to mention to me saying, why don't you apply for this Limca book? You could get it,
Yeah.
I never heard of it. I knew about Limca book, but I didn't know what, how, where and all that. So I
Right.
found out, and just so happened the Limca Book Records office was just next to my office. So I said, chalo, if nothing else, I'll just walk to them and find out what happened. So I crossed the road one day and went up to them and told them, this is what I've done. Does it merit anything? Then they gave me a form and said, fill it up and all that. So I filled up the form, attached all those 30 odd certificates and gave it. And few months later, they sent me the Limca certificate. I was very happy. Then I said, if I can do 30, there are 52 weeks in a year. At least I should be able to do 52. No, every Sunday I should be able to find some event somewhere in the country or wherever I am traveling in the world and do it. So my goal was to do 52 in 52. How I ended up doing 60 is on some days I did 2 events.
1 day, 2 events.
So what used to happen was, for example, in Delhi, there's a run happening, say, in Dwarka. And there's one run happening, say, in Gurgaon. And the both are, let's assume, starting at 7 in the morning. So I would enter half marathon in both. I would request one of the organizers, do you mind if I come an hour early and run? Because by the time they've set up the route, they've set up their water station, they're doing all that work. So I said, I'll run that. That'll give me, so that gave me an hour before.
Wow.
And this organizer would tell boss, I'll come to you not at 7, but I'll come around 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whatever. And I'll run the next one. And all these organizers also are all known to each one of us. All of us know all the organizers. So they kindly consented and said, we are okay. Because they knew I was genuinely running. I used to register, get a bib. I used to pay for it. I used to get a bib. I would get a proper timing certificate. Everything was properly done. It's just that I was using a little bit of
adjusting the time to,
That's all. And I did it.
Wow.
That's how I managed to do a little more than 50. I did 60.
This is absolute crazy stuff, right? Doing 2 half marathons in the same city.
It could be half marathon, it could be 10K, because in this record there are 10Ks, halves and fulls, and maybe an ultra or two thrown in. So a combination. But what I mean to say is I used to do in some of the Sundays I did multiple events. I remember in Bombay, there is something called Mirchi Neon Run, which was happening in the evening. So I ran one run in the morning, then I went and ran Mirchi Neon Run in the evening, and that's how I got 2 races on the same day.
That is still okay. You get some break in between.
So
that's true.
It can happen. I mean, if you put your mind to it, and there are ways to make it happen.
So courage is all about taking risk, and obviously you shared enough examples as far as your running journey is concerned in taking risk. But has risk taking in your work life or in your personal life, has that become easier for you because you're a ultra marathoner?
So let me tell you, I never thought I would get some amount of fame by doing all this. Like you contacted me for this. This must be, I must have done over maybe a dozen or 2 dozen such engagements. I've got mentioned in newspaper articles. I went and met Prime Minister Modi also. In fact, he signed on my World 6 Marathon Major certificate.
Very interesting.
He wrote Vande Mataram Narendra Modi and the date. So it got me some amount of, you can say, recognition, some amount of fame. And who doesn't want it, to be fair? Anybody who says who doesn't want it, I think is being untruthful. Let me be. I don't want to say liar, but it is untruthful. Everybody's happy. I'm not boasting about it, but I'm happy that, there is some recognition for what I've done. Though I never started, actually, I never knew I'd end up doing all this. This all happened step by step. If 16 years ago somebody had told me I should joke with people कि मन करे तो bathroom जाने के लिए भी गाड़ी होना चाहिए. Cycling and running तो दूर तक, it was nowhere in my scheme of things. If you all know, in Delhi we used to have a guy called Rahul Varghese. Let me also give him credit. So my friend Mohit, my wife Rinchin, my friend Rahul Varghese. Okay, these are the 3-4 people who got me into sport. This running and cycling and all that. We used to have, Mohit got me my first cycle. There was an American embassy lady going back. I bought a second-hand cycle from her for $5,000 and that's how I began cycling. Okay, I went to her house. I remember in Friends Colony, there was this diplomat lady and I went and picked up the cycle from her. And Mohit told me, go right now and buy it at $5,000. It's a steal. Somebody will offer a little more. She'll sell it to that bugger. You go buy right now. So I dropped everything, sat in the car. My wife, we drove to Friends Colony with $5,000 cash and just picked up the cycle.
Wow.
So there are friends who, and another thing really which helped me was in our office building, our earlier office building in Gurgaon, there was a gym below which opened after we moved in there. And when that gym opened, I would go to the gym downstairs and it was very convenient. You parked your car in your parking, you went to the gym, you exercised, you ran, whatever. Then you showered and you went up to work. Correct. And sometimes late, going back home in the evening, if I would see outside the window, bahut bada traffic hai abhi. It'll take 1 hour just to get out from this Cyber Hub complex. If you remember the olden days, Cyber Hub was the messiest traffic ever. So I would, instead of wasting my time sitting in the car, I would go back in the gym again and I would do a second stint. I would do 2 stints. I would run in the morning morning, I'd run in the evening. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'd run in the day also, in the middle. When I would see in my calendar, I would a couple of hours of some time in the middle where there are no meeting schedule or anything. I would
Yeah.
go down to the gym, run for an hour and come back upstairs,
Wow.
to my office again. So what I
Yeah.
mean to say is that gym also was a very big catalyst of having. So, there's a combination of factors, if you ask me,
Yeah.
which got me into this. Rahul at that time was training for his comrades. That's how he began. Some people in Gurgaon started running with him. And
Yeah.
then he came up with Leisure Valley runs. He used to organize these 5 kilometer, 10 kilometer runs in Leisure Valley. And we
Yeah.
all used to land up. And my friend Mohit would come from Delhi, pick me up. We would go together. My wife, all three of us would go. And we would all do some 5K, 10K, kind of simple runs and come back. And running and living was Rahul's company. And with running and living, we went and ran so many places in the country we went and ran because of Rahul.
That's right. I know you're a travel buff, right from Himalayas to even Mount Kilimanjaro. You've gone places, right? Which is one place which stands out as, और कहीं नहीं गया, और कोई नहीं गया होगा, I've been to this place. What would that one place be like among all your...
I love the mountains. The Himalayas are beautiful. I've traveled extensively in Ladakh, Zanskar, Spiti, Lahore, multiple times. The first time I went was 1995, where we got stuck in the snow. My wife and brother were lifted by Air Force chopper and evacuated from there by Air Force chopper. And I had to stay back because my gypsy was there. And I spent 20 days stuck, waiting for the roads to clear and somehow come back. So mountains have been very, very... So if you ask me, I love the mountains. If I've given a chance, I'll go every time back to Ladakh. Let me tell you the story about the Ladakh marathon. I went to run the half marathon there. A friend of mine wanted to run. So he asked me, he said, okay, we'll go together. I reached there a day before. Normally people go 5-6 days in advance to acclimatize, etc., etc. And I had registered for the half. The organizer, I requested them just a day before the race when I was collecting the bib. Can you convert this to full? They refused. I requested them again. They agreed. So I took a full marathon bib and I went and ran Leh, the marathon. So, the mountains are awesome. The last 2 years ago, we went to Umlingla, which is the highest road in the world, 19,000 some feet. I went and ran a 10K on my own over there. So, these are the kind of things I like.
Yeah.
Okay, the mountains, every trip to the mountains is wonderful for me. So if you ask me which is the best place I'd like to go, is the mountains. Just like in the beginning of this year, we were in Canada and we went up to the Rockies. Me and my son, we went for some hikes. My wife also, we went and walked the frozen lakes. Walking on ice on the frozen lake is a very different feeling. So that was something we really like. So for me, mountains have a lot of charm and I would love to, spend more time if possible. And that's my aim one day is to, when I retire, is spend more time in the mountains.
Right.
Okay. Traveling is I love driving. We have driven all across. We have driven across Canada coast to coast. We've driven US coast to coast. We've driven Australia. We've driven all of Germany, all of France, England, top to bottom, all Scandinavia, whole of Spain, Portugal, some parts of other parts of the world. Extensively, we've driven in different parts of the world. And that's one more thing I want to do. So the longest road in the world is from the tip of South Africa, which is Cape Town, from Africa, to end of Siberia, the Pacific Ocean in Siberia. So if you come up the African continent, take a right, enter from Europe into Asia, and then you continue straight all the way. The only problem is bloody half that area is under some war or the other all the time. So you don't want to go there and get killed or something. So you have to be careful on that account. That's one journey I'd like to do. Another journey I'd like to do is what's called the Trans-American Highway. It starts from the tip of Alaska and goes down to the tip of South America. So that's another trip. So driving is something which is something in our mind. What me and my wife have done is little untraditional right now. So we have over the years, as we earned some money, we built a few homes here and there. Every home we put on rent and we are staying in a hotel. Right now, because our elder son got married, he's staying in his own home. Our younger son has gone to Canada to study. So we decided to experiment. So it's been 4 months now, nearly, that we are staying in a service apartment hotel building. We find it very convenient. You just have to just exit when you can, come back when you want. There's no bloody ties. You don't have to worry about servants. You don't have to worry about electricity, water, nothing, everything. It's a hotel. I mean, you're staying in a hotel. You have to pay a rate every month, which is fine. At the end of the day, what is money for if you can't enjoy it? So we just cut a check, a credit card swipe at the end of the month for the whole month and, that's taken care of. We go where we want to go. We travel. And my work is such that I travel 15 days or so a month on work itself. And so we're experimenting with this kind of living also. Let's see, we've given it a shot till March. Maybe we'll do something till this. We continue this till March. Otherwise, we'll move into one of our homes. So I think the borders have been created by human beings. Animals don't need passports or visas. They travel wherever they have to. Birds fly from one continent to another. Why should I be restricted, by such man-made boundaries? Okay, so, but unfortunately, we have to. If I don't know if you ever realize, we are the only species in the world who have to pay to live. Every other species lives for free, and we think we are advanced, paying for everything. They are all enjoying. Every other animal and plant in the kingdom of this globe is free. All the fish swim from one ocean to another ocean. Nobody stops anybody. So I want to be something like that. So I want to travel. I want to, so another way of doing that is also to get unfortunately, our Indian passport doesn't allow travel so easily, which some other countries' passports do. So we have plans some plans to acquire some passport. Let's see if we can manage that in some way. If
Right.
that happens, it'll make the traveling bug that I have easier. Be able to travel that much more simpler or smoother. And someday I hope to write a book. There are lots I've done which I can.
What would your book title be?
I think a life well lived or whatever, something I'll think of it. I've not even thought of it yet. It can be anything. I have made some notes which I write down.
Yeah.
I'll refer to them someday, and when I have the time, I'll sit and start typing. It may be a book which people may want to read. It may be a book which may be not that good, but let's see.
That brings me to an offbeat question. You mentioned that you're an avid reader as well. A couple of books which stay with you in terms of inspiration, books which have...
I hate management books. All those Gyan books are useless if you ask me. I've never read any of them. If you can't fall asleep, start reading one of them, you'll fall asleep. That's what I believe. I love fiction. Ken Follett, Frederick Forsyth, these are my old authors.
Yeah.
Which I used to love reading. A lot of good authors are there around. At any moment of time on my phone, on my Kindle, I'm reading a William Dalrymple book right now. He's another author which I like a lot.
Right.
Okay? So I read multiple authors. I like history. I like fiction.
Yeah.
Okay? I like murder stuff. World War between America and Russia, the Cold War and the pre-espionage, that kind of book. If you remember that book, Firefox, Firefox Down. Okay, those movies, so those are the kind of books I like. So I can't tell you any one name, but I've given you so many authors, you can judge for yourself the kind of books I like, history books I like.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a very nice book on the Mughals. There were one book. I forget the name of the author who wrote it. Lovely books. So I like history. And unfortunately, as a human race, we haven't learned. History is a great teacher. History repeats itself. You have to learn from it. If you understand history and you learn from it, you won't repeat the same mistakes. Unfortunately, we keep repeating the same mistakes because we haven't learned from history. And unfortunately, when in school also, history is looked upon as a subject. Kisko kuch nahi aata, wo history padhta hai. Everybody, if you remember in our time, it was computer science.
You mug it all up, right? Yeah.
In those days, there was no computer science. There was engineering drawing.
Of course.
So if you wanted to be an engineer, you went to ED or you went to bio because you wanted to be medicine. There were the only two science branches. Each of those branches had physics and chemistry in it and maths. Bio guys didn't do maths, but they did physics, chemistry. Okay. That was the only difference. Then it was always, that was like grade A. Grade B was commerce guys. Anybody who didn't get grade A went to grade B. Commerce was economics, accounting, kind of stuff. And finally there was C, which is arts, history, literature, political science, sociology, all those subjects. Yeah. Anybody who went into arts was like, "Acha, tune kuch nahi kiya life mein, to tu arts mein chala gaya." But if you ask me today,
it's completely reverse.
It's reverse. The guys, I read this, it was more like a joke. Okay, what I read was, the guys who did all the studies and became the engineers and doctors are working for the guys who did finance because they became business owners. Yeah. The business owners are working for the guys who did arts because they became bureaucrats, IAS guys and all the ones who went, and the guys who did nothing got expelled or didn't finish school became politicians. Everybody's working for them. So the moral of the story is, you choose what you want to do in life very early. You can decide. Finally, it's common sense, logic, and being street smart that helps you more.
Yes, okay? No doubt.
Your skill of communication, your skill of networking. I should be able to, in a conversation, I should be able to make you follow me. Yeah. Okay, you should be able to understand me as a person, understand what I'm trying to tell you. You should be able to, if I can sway you and I can sway a bunch of people, half my job's done. Yeah. I can get a bunch of you to do what I want to get done if I can sway you. Correct. Okay, if I can lead, if I can communicate, if I can, impress upon. Those are the things I think which are very important for individuals as characteristic traits to pick up. Okay, obviously domain is required. You can't fly a plane just on communication. You can't do heart surgery just on communication. You need to know, you have to be a heart surgeon to do heart surgery. The other day I read this joke, that this guy who he's getting operated upon. So his family is all waiting outside of the operation theater. And this guy is there, and then suddenly the one doctor comes out. So the patients run, the relatives run. Patient कैसे है? नहीं ठीक चल रहा है, सब ऑपरेशन ठीक चल रहा है, चिंता मत करो, बस खत्म करने वाले हैं, आधे घंटे में सब ठीक हो जाएगा. And he walks out, ठीक है? Then after half an hour, another doctor comes, looking very down. What happened? He said, नहीं वो मैं खत्म कर रहा था, वो बीच में वो इंटरनेट खत्म हो गया, मैं YouTube पे वीडियो देख के बंद कर रहा था, इतने में वो YouTube पे वीडियो बंद हो गया, तो खत्म, पेशेंट मर गया. So you don't want to go to such a doctor, do you? You want to go to a doctor who knew his work, not doing operation, looking at YouTube video.
Very true.
So that's
you know to be very honest and blunt, right? Anytime your honesty or bluntness has caused you trouble?
Oh, many times. I can't recollect instances like that, but I've been told many times, be diplomatic. Okay, I've been told many times, don't open your mouth every time. Sometimes, just listen to what others want to tell you also. I have this habit of talking before even hearing the other guy. It's a fault. I admit it. It's my fault. But I am now what I am. I can't now, at 55 age, I'm not going to go change now. If I'm that way, I am that way. But yes, sometimes it's better to listen to everybody in the room before you voice your thought.
Yeah.
I think that's one piece of advice I can give everybody is that as a leader, take everybody with you. Even if you want to get something done, do it. Let the other guy think as if it's his idea. And I've started implementing that a lot now. I make people believe that what I want to get done through their thinking, as if it's their idea. They were the ones who, so you have to mold the conversation in that direction in such a way that, you get the outcome you're looking for.
Right. No, it's been fantastic. And I think this is the part of the podcast where I switch the mics around. Adil, what's the question you have for me?
So you also are quite accomplished, I'm sure, in what you've done. You've been, the other day you told me that you're shuttling between Coimbatore and Gurgaon because your mom's there. And you're in that phase of life where you are mentoring folks, you're an angel investor, and you are looking at repaying back to society over the years, the knowledge that you've gained, whatever money you've earned, you're trying to somehow help people out with that, with both knowledge, experience, money. So I think that's something which I think is great. And if you could elaborate a bit more and maybe hold sessions for people who are starting out. So in my job is to recruit people. So I go to campuses also. And I still see there's a huge disconnect between what are being produced in colleges as students, the curriculum they study, etc., and what is actually required by industry.
True.
Okay, and that's why all big companies have long and huge training programs, which they train people before they actually make them deploy them at work. So maybe I think a question to you would be is how would you think going forward you can bridge this gap, make more content towards making people understand what's required by industry versus what is produced by campus. So bridge the gap between. So there are 3 C's. There's this one guy who started a company called Coke, who used to call it 3 C's: campus, candidate, corporate. How to bridge the 3 together and see, how it works.
Yeah. No, so very interesting question. So there is one song which remains with me, very old one. Apne liye jiye to kya jiye, tu jiye dil zamane ke liye, right? At some point of time, we all should think of the other people, right? Not just think about ourselves. And I think that's been, I won't call it a mission, but it's like a underlying thought or underlying my thought which stays in my mind all the time, right? And the second one is a beautiful book called Die Empty. And my father was very impressed by the whole concept. So which is the largest knowledge base in the world?
The largest knowledge.
Yeah.
I think the human brain, the human mind, if you ask me.
It's in the cemetery.
Okay.
People die, they give everything away. Jameen, Jaidad,
so that's another,
right?
In the Parsi community in Delhi, our cemetery, guess where it is?
You have a different system, right? Yeah.
We have a cemetery in Aurangzeb Road, where a house today will cost maybe 1,000 crores. So all of us are destined to live after death in the most expensive real estate in this country. So you can say today I'm living in some 20 crore house. That time I'll live in some 2,000 crore house.
How lucky.
Yeah. Coming back to your point, yes, you're right. Once you die, you take away or whatever. To that point, the way science is progressing, people are talking about cloning. People are talking about preserving some brain tissue or something of some very smart IQ people, and cloning them back in some way. I mean, there are some people who have preserved their DNA and their stem cells or whatever I think it's called, where in some cases it can be, I don't know, it can come back or not. I'm not sure.
Gene therapy.
But gene therapy. No, and what there's another one, where after you die, there's somebody who offers you they freeze you, your body, that is. So then someday in future, if some technology comes in, some science comes in where they can recreate you or put life back into you, you'll again wake up someday,
Adil too. Adil the second.
Yeah, I don't want to be. Boss, can you imagine you wake up 400 years later and your grandkids didn't know who you are? Not grandkids, some 5th, 6th, 7th generation. And they'll say, 600 साल के बाद ये हमारे घर में कौन बुड्ढा आ गया करके. I don't want to be there.
You can start all over again, right? You don't need the same family.
You never know where you get pushed, where you land up. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's true. What I was saying is that, people die giving away everything. They're well done, daulat, right? But they don't give away their knowledge, right? They carry their knowledge with them, right? So my idea is to share the knowledge as much as possible. And I think the other idea which struck me is, right, I mean, we have a CSR policy where, 2% of your annual revenue should be spent towards giving back to society.
Annual profit, not revenue. Annual profit.
So everyone should have a CSR policy, right? You want to spend 2% of your wealth or 2% of your knowledge should in some way be given back to the society.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. I have also said this many times that we all pay so much of tax
Yeah.
Income tax, we pay GST, we
Yeah.
pay so much,
Only the
I mean,
5% of the country, by the way. Not everyone does that anyway,
yeah.
unfortunately.
So we
Yeah.
all pay so much of tax. And in all honesty, if the government came with some policy
Hmm.
where like you have CSR for corporates, similarly
Yeah.
for individuals,
Hmm.
where they say for every rupee that you do some activity,
Yeah.
we'll give you some benefit in your tax return.
Yeah.
Only thing is because of so much of chori that happens, people
Yeah.
is
I know.
fraud
People will
there.
misuse that. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we misuse it, fraud it. So there has to be some very strict mechanism to govern it, to manage it. But if that's possible,
Ah.
it will help people do the right. For example, you adopt 5 poor kids in your locality, yeah,
Yeah.
and you pay for their school fees.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Just pay for their school fees. If you don't have time to, devote anything
True.
or sponsor something for their well-being, whatever. What I mean to say here is that there's a whole lot of things that individuals can do, which I
Yeah.
think are doing also. I mean, I do myself. Okay, I do charity. I am the vice president of our Parsi Association in Delhi. My dad was a trust president for years. I've been associated for nearly 30 years now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all do it in our way, but it's not formalized.
Yeah.
As such. So maybe there could be some formal policy or rules that the government can formulate, which will allow individuals to also do this. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of corporates in the CSR also, they do their own, there's a trick where you left pocket, right pocket,
Yeah.
It's not as clear and clean as it should be.
So I think that's the way it is, and I think that's a good way to end. Adil, it's been a
Thank you.
fantastic experience running through your journey and highly inspiring. And I'm sure that a lot of listeners will get inspired to do their own journey of courage through this.
Thanks, Hetal. Thanks.
Yeah.
Wish you all the
Thanks.
best. When you're next
Thanks.
in Gurgaon, keep in touch. We'll catch up for a meal or something.
Definitely.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.